Hello and welcome back. I got something real cool for you guys today. This is an actual teletext editing terminal from the 1980s, which was recently donated to me by Adrian. A big thanks for that. Now the timing of this is impeccable because here in the UK we are about to witness the incredible spectacle of a high-profile vote between a populist and a space warrior who curiously has a manifesto pledge of returning teletext to the airwaves, and he has even delivered said manifesto in the appropriate format. Now, I don't normally like to get all political, but I'm feeling partisan at the moment, and I think the same could also be said for the UK teletext community at large. So yeah, we're going to have to figure out how to use this old thing again, which is going to be a bit tricky because, as always, we have absolutely no documentation for it. But before we do that, let's have a quick look at the history of the editing of teletext. Whichever point in history you look at, teletext editing was probably performed on some kind of computer system, the one exception being the years of the BBC's prototype service, which involved teleprinter machines and a lot of paper tape. In the first decade of proper service, mainframe computer systems running rudimentary editing software were the go-to, and in the case of the BBC, these were developed in-house. By the 1980s, teletext had spread to other broadcasters in the UK and to other countries. With a corresponding explosion of editing activity, attention was soon turned to efficiency. With early editing systems leaving most of the heavy lifting to the operator, calls for a new, more efficient system grew louder. The solution was developed at the Independent Broadcasting Authority, or IBA, in the form of a new editor called Sprite. The software would eventually be commercialized by a company called Synapse Systems and licensed to Softel, who produced the terminal that we have here today. Heading into the 1990s, personal computers became more widespread, leading to the inevitable call for a PC-based suite rather than having to take up valuable disk space with a dedicated editing terminal. In response, Sprite was ported to Windows as WinSprite and continued to evolve from there. And WinSprite isn't freely available, however, a range of other open source alternatives have since been developed. Alright, let's get started. Now, to make this a bit easier for you guys, I'm capturing the output of this terminal and overlaying it onto the screen. That just seems to be a clearer way to demonstrate this rather than trying to film me typing away on the whole setup. So we're at the setup and introduction screen here, and we can see this name on the screen of Andrew Lambourne. Now, from what I've read, he was one of the key characters in this space. So let's get into the editor. Now, without knowing anything about it, it does behave exactly the same way that you would expect it to. So if I type in some characters, they appear on the screen, just like that. Basic functions such as insert. So if I type some stuff and then push the insert key, the characters following it are pushed outwards as we would expect, so that's pretty normal. It has a backspace, delete, which these all work the same way that you would expect. But one difference is, though, that the editor actually treats the screen as a grid of characters, so you don't have to insert a whole bunch of white space to type somewhere random in the middle of the page. You just move the cursor to wherever you want to start typing and type away, and it's all works nice and easily. So let's delete these lines. So another cool feature we've got here is this line delete. So we can come and delete an entire line of text just by pushing it, like that. We can actually insert entire lines as well. So if we want to insert a blank line in the middle of somewhere, we can just go and insert them just like that. So that's pretty cool. It also has a word wrap feature. So let's try that one out. Turn off the insert and turn word wrap on. The word, it's a little bit quirky, so what I would have to do is type a character just to say where the beginning of my paragraph is. Then if I go to the end of the line and then start typing a word, then it wraps it like that. So if I don't do that, if I just start typing near the end of the line, it assumes that my paragraph starts over the other side and wraps around to there. So yeah, if you're not used to it, it is a little bit quirky, but so it is. I'm sure it's good once you get used to it. Next feature we have, I'm just reading off a list here because there's no way I can remember all this. We've got a vertical entry mode, so when I turn that on and I start typing, the cursor goes down with the text, which is really cool. What else we got? So we've got a line move mode, so if I hold down the shift key, we can move whole lines of text around like that, which is nice. I really like that. That's pretty cool. Next up we have this block select mode. So if I push the block key like this, you get this flashing box which you can move around with the cursor keys. And you push the skip key to change the corner. So once I do that, I can then move the blocks of text around just like that. Just once again, it's a really nice productivity feature, and this wouldn't have been something you would have had on a very early editing system. So the other thing we can do with the block is we can actually use it to define an area that we want to type in. So if we turn on block again, and I'm going to say I want to type up there, like that. I just define an empty block, then I start typing. So, oops, I'm still on vertical mode. Let's turn that off. So when I press the keys now, it's actually only going to type inside of that box. So that's quite neat. If you just have a little spot where you want to put some text, you can just go and constrain it to that particular area. And when you get to the point where you don't want to do that anymore, you would then push the block key again, and then press this diagonal back arrow, which returns the block to the entire screen. Right, let's clear up our screen here because we've got a whole lot of mess on it. Now the other interesting feature, and this is probably one of the more advanced things, is this idea of a foreground and a background page. So let's type some text on the foreground page. Text. Then we press the swap button, and that disappears. So we're now on the background page. So just for clarity, I'm going to type some text on the background page. Like that. So when I press the swap button, I'm swapping between the two. And the background page is just a place where you can put stuff while you're editing. It's like the equivalent of having another notepad window open to copy and paste text into. So let's say we want to copy some text from the background page. I think what we can do is we can go block, move it so that it's containing only that text. Then press cut. And if I go swap to the foreground page, there we go. So it's just moved that text or copied that text onto the foreground page, which is quite nice. Pretty cool. Next up, we're going to have a look at the merge feature. Now this is something that once again acts on the foreground and background pages. So the idea, if we swap to the background page, I've already got some text there. We push merge, and this gives us this split screen display. What it basically allows you to do is to see, first of all, what is on each page, or certainly the beginning of each page. Then we can go on a line-by-line basis and copy text from the background page onto the foreground page. So to skip a line of text, we press shift and then the arrow keys, but to take a line of text, we then take our finger off the shift key and then press the arrow keys, and then that will take that text. Press return, then that's just copied it from the background page onto the foreground page. So it's like having another editor window open in the background, and alt-tabbing between the two or something would be the modern equivalent. Now the next thing we're going to look at is control codes. Now these are things which obviously allow the display to do certain special things. We'll start off with flash. So if I press that, my background text is going to flash, just to bring that to people's attention or something. Now in this mode we can press the DCC key, which actually reveals where the control characters are, which is quite a handy feature. So I can go and whack another control character in here. The steady character, delete that, and this will mean that only the word background will flash. So what else have we got? We've got the conceal display, so if we press that button, and type some stuff that's hidden. And then we'll go, I think it's white, visible. So now if I press the rev, this means reveal, so that reveals the hidden text. There we go. So this is the kind of thing that would be used for like a trivia page or something like that. Right, what else have we got? The next one is the start box inbox. So I can't really fully demonstrate this, but if I go SB and then EB, end box. So what this is for is to let the decoder know that this is a subtitle. So clear out a box over some active video and display that text in its place. So it's not something that's really entirely relevant during editing, but anyway, that's roughly what they would look like. What have we got next? The next thing we're going to look at is actually text colors. So let's get rid of all this stuff and start again. So what I'm going to do first of all is type out some text in various different colors, and we just press a color key to do that. So red, green, yellow, blue, magenta, cyan, and we'll skip white because you've seen white. Now on your screen right now you can see all of those quite clearly, but on my screen I actually almost can't see the blue at all, and I can barely see the red, and this is something that we've talked about before. Now the difference is you guys are seeing this through a component video capture, so all of the chrominance is the same bandwidth as the luminance, so you can see everything very clearly, but I'm viewing this actually on a composite link, so the chrominance bandwidth is immediately halved, and then other colors such as blue and red, the bandwidth allocated to those is significantly less again because the eye is less sensitive, so you basically just end up not being able to see text of those colors. So they're pretty much unusable for teletext, even though you technically can use them. Presumably if we make it bigger, so we go double height, then blue, it's slightly more visible to me. I can make it out a little bit better, but it's still not that great. Now what you would probably do in order to make it a bit more visible is have it as a background instead. So for that we would go blue, and then I think it's new background blue. Oh, the new background, and then is it BB? No, sorry, it's not BB. ST. Oh, I can't remember. Sorry, oh no, let me start again. So there we go. So it's blue, new background, white. There we go. So that gives us blue text on a white background, which is much more visible than just blue text by itself. So we could do the same for, we could do a red, and then it would be new background, then we go, well, let's say yellow, red text, sorry, yellow text. Also a reasonably usable combination. Alright, what else can we do? So there's, I'm looking at my list here. Another cool productivity feature here is this change key. So if I press this, I can change a color. So let's say I want to change all instances of blue, and I press blue, and I'm going to change them into green. Just like that. Really nice. Cool. Well, I think that's about all I want to cover with the editing of text. And I have to say, I didn't just come in and ace this. I spent hours and hours and hours trying to bash away at this keyboard, trying to figure out how to do all this stuff because I don't have any documentation. And inevitably, there's going to be more functionality, which I've missed. Yeah, sorry about that. But the next thing we're going to move on to is graphics. It's worth pointing out that everything we've talked about in terms of text editing pretty much all applies to graphics editing, because behind the scenes it's all just characters. But there's of course some graphics specific stuff to cover. Now the first of all is, how do we actually enter any graphics? Now we know from the spec that we have to enter a start graphics control code. Maybe it's going to be one of these buttons, but when you press them they just do text. So it turns out all you do is you go shift. So that would then start entering cyan graphics. And we can use the enter key here as a little shortcut to copy this so we can prepare the whole page for cyan graphics entry. So when you press this, it samples the character under the key. Then we use arrow keys to copy that to wherever we want. So we've got a good chunk of it ready for Cyan Graphics N3 now. From here we can just pick a mosaic. Once again, we use a shortcut key and just draw a box just like that. Very easy. So yeah, not much to it. Just get rid of that. Oh, right. Oh, I've made a mess on a box. There we go. So having drawn a box, what can we do? Well, we can play with the sixels keys. So these are like little buttons here to toggle each of the 6 bits of the sixel mosaics characters individually, like that. So that's quite nice and easy. And we can also play around with some of the special graphics control codes. So we've got a couple of them to play with here. So SG, which is separate graphics or separate glyphs. I'm not sure what terminology they actually use. So if we press that one, that didn't do what I was expecting. Why did that not work? There we go. So we've just split the top row of our box into individual sixels. So there's no real functional difference. It's just displaying those as 6 individual squares instead of a solid block. And if we start playing with these sixels keys, you can actually toggle all of those individually like that. So yeah, just a visual thing which may be useful in some particular scenarios. Now next we need to have a look at the hold graphic and release graphic functionality. So for that I'm going to change the color of this line here to red. Now let's suppose it's Christmas and we want to have some red and green. So change to green here. Turn off our control codes. So we've got a red and green. Oops, I left the enter turned on accidentally. But notice that we've got this gap in here. Now that's the control code that changed the color to green, which yes, it's just a bit crap and it's spoiling the mood. So what do we do about that? So that's where this next control key comes in. So this is HG, which is hold graphic or hold glyph. So we enter somewhere earlier on where we've got an example of a character we want to use to substitute the control characters. We enter an HG, hold graphic, hold glyph, whatever it is. That then fills all following control characters with that same character, so effectively closing the gap there. So yeah, that's quite a nice, visually important thing. Let's say we want to switch now to yellow, and it continues even after that transition, but we can cancel it by pushing the button again, which then goes to RG, or which is release graphics. So the usual behavior then resumes. Now I guess it's worth looking at the block functionality again, because it's kind of interesting now that we've got a graphics on screen. So let's define a block. It's going to be inside our box that we just drew. So this starts becoming quite useful now. Oh, now I've just started typing, but I got some graphics, and that's because I've missed a step here. So before we can type any graphics, we actually have to switch the inside of the box back to a text mode. So for that we have to enter, let's say we want to have white text. So we enter white, and we'll just copy that down here, and that's wrecking the other side of the box, but we'll sort that out in a minute. And then we have to, when we exit the box, we then have to switch back to the cyan graphics again. So we go Shift Cyan, enter copy, and we'll just get rid of those extra spaces. There we go. So now we can enter some text into the box. Let's try that again. Right. Oh, we'll have to have the word wrap feature on. Lovely. So you can kind of see from this how this is just such a huge productivity boost for editors. They can do all these really complex things with relatively little effort. So let's turn off the control codes. So there it is. Now notice how there is a gap between the bar, or the cyan bar, and the text, and that's because you've got a control character. Now I worked out you can sort of improve that by using this hold graphics thing, but the hold glyph thing, or whatever it is, but it doesn't quite end up working the way I would have expected. So I don't think you would ever see a box that perfectly surrounds text. I don't think that's actually possible. Maybe some experts out there know differently, but yeah, anyway, so that's all of our basic graphics stuff that I know of anyway. The last feature, which I'm not able to demo, but I'll give you guys a sense of how it possibly works. I'll show you the help page for it. Let's just go back to a full block. So we go help, and it's alpha. So this is a functionality called alpha graphics. There's the help page for it. It does give us a vague overview of what it does, but it doesn't give us enough information how to, in terms of how to actually really use it for real. But to give you a sense, you would define a font page which has, well, let's make some graphics first of all. So let's suppose you have a custom typeface, which is like, I'm going to just draw a letter A, like this. That's our letter A. And somehow or other we just say that this is going to be our A. And this is the kind of thing that would happen in like a heading or something. You've got some kind of typeface which you key out using graphics. It would be pretty tedious to have to key that out every single time. So what alpha graphics, what the functionality, what I think it does, and I don't know how to structure these font pages, but you assign a graphic to a letter on the keyboard, and it allows you to just go and stamp out the characters just by typing letters on the keyboards. An example would be the typeface that I used in the thumbnail of this video. If I was using the alpha graphics feature, I wouldn't have to go and key that out every time. I would just assign all of those letters to letters on the keyboard and just type them out as if they were a big, massive custom font. So yeah, that's quite a nice productivity feature, and it would be interesting to know how to use it, but there's just not enough information in that help page to crack on and actually do that. So anyway, that concludes our demo. I hope that was interesting, and inevitably I'm going to have missed some things, but that's certainly all I know at the moment. So now time for a quick look inside, and as I said in the title, it's based on the BBC Master, and for that reason we're not going to get too carried away looking in here because there's lots of pictures of the Master around the internet. What we'll do instead is focus on what's different about it. So the only plastic work from the Master that's actually here is the cartridge socket and the cartridges themselves, and these are containing the Softel editor software, so there's one of them there. And there's actually two of them, and I've heard that you can run these things at an ordinary Master or an emulator. Not having the keyboard will slow you down a little bit, but so it certainly is usable. The other difference is the Teletext decoder chip, or the character generator chip, is on a little mezzanine board here, and according to a thread on the Stardot forums, which I'll link to in the description, this has been done so that this is for the DCC key, the display control codes, so that they can be intercepted and shown as an actual different character rather than showing nothing, which is what it would normally do. Keyboard interface is obviously different because this thing has a completely different keyboard. There's the controller for it there. The keyboard plugs in the back via a male DA15 connector there, and we got a reset button on the back there. This thing here is a little reset button which just resets it, and I'm not sure if that's actually standard or not. Now in terms of the keyboard, one interesting feature of it is that it actually has a microcontroller inside it with some software running on it, and when you power this thing on, it boots straight into the editor, which is an unusual thing. Now it turns out that what's happening is the keyboard is typing in the command into the Acorn MOS to boot the editor software, which is yeah, that's pretty interesting. So to get to to actually get to the MOS interface, what you have to do is unplug the keyboard, and then you can go in and muck around with it. But yeah, as long as the keyboard's plugged in, you can't get into it so easily. But anyway, there's the inside of it, and it's not anything overly different from a normal master. Well, that is all for this video, and if you are interested to know more, I would recommend you check out the recent upload from Dane, where he showed us an actual teletext inserter. I'll leave the link for that at the end of this video. Now, that particular unit is much newer than this thing here, and it's also from a different company, but still relevant. Now, I'm told that Softel also had a teletext inserter product which was sold alongside this sort of terminal and likely even used with it in the field. However, I'm not aware of any surviving samples of that particular piece of equipment, and there would have been a whole centralized computer system, and goodness knows what else that would have gone with it as well, which, yeah, we're not going to be seeing any of that, unfortunately. Now, if anybody out there does have the manual for this particular item and it gets scanned, I will leave a link to it in the description in future. Well, certainly I will update it. But anyway, that's all for today's video, and as always, thank you for watching.